previous session, we learned how we can design a wireframe for the needs based on our user and persona and determine where each element should be placed. The next step is to move on to prototyping, but there's an important step in between, which is called designing a design system. What is this exactly? I prepare a file for myself with the elements that are going to be used on the website, including colors, fonts, border radius, and other items. For instance, I determine my main colors based on the logo I have. So I can define 1 to 3 main colors, and similarly, I can choose 1 to 3 secondary colors. I can define them like white, black, or gray. So based on the color palette that defines my visual identity, I also define the color. I decide what type of font I should use, what my font family should be, based on the type of my business. Again, I choose my font. If my business has a fantasy style, I use fantasy fonts. Or if my business is such that most of the people I work with are women, then I need to use classic fonts. Now, what should be the size of the headings and titles? For example, how big should the subtitles be? How large should the body text be? Furthermore, what should be the size of the font for paragraphs or writing? We define these first and create a guideline for ourselves so that whether for prototyping or designing my site, I have this guide, which means that everything should be defined based on these sizes and dimensions. Now, let's move on to designing the design system itself, which is not something very different or strange. We need to design this in the same Figma. Guys, we go into Figma itself and create a new frame. Again, as usual, guys, we define the size because we said that when we are going to work, we set it to 1980. I set this to 1980. Now in this section, I change its name. At the top of this frame, I write design or system. Okay? Guys, in the first step, this is useful both for the designer and for the programmer who is going to do the site design, whether it's the graphic designer or the UI UX designer. I need to come and specify a series of priorities and categories that I have here. In the first step, guys, I go for colors and say, okay, I want to define my colors. I want to define 2 main colors and 2 neutral colors. I will also set the title size so that I can write my colors here and say, okay, this first section will be the website colors. They say, guys, now I basically define a grid for it and say, okay, essentially be on the column, and have 14 as well. I will align the website colors from both sides, starting from the first or second one that we talked about before. I will define it a bit, make it bold, and set a font so that I can add a title for it. Let's make it a bit bold, and I'll add a line just to improve its appearance and draw this. I'll make its color a bit lighter. Now guys, this is just the titles, meaning this isn't part of the design we're doing. We do this to work more neatly. Now I'll add 4 boxes for the colors I want to define. And let's align all of them together with the 4th box, both horizontally and centrally. Now I want to define my colors, guys. We usually pick the colors based on the logo colors. The logo that is defined should have colors that match the color psychology of the website. Now, we'll start assigning colors to these one by one. For the first color, I want to give it a blue shade. I've defined these beforehand. And this blue color, guys, has a color code. To make my work cleaner, I also put the color code here for myself and for anyone who is going to see and work on this file. I say, okay, the first color is blue and the second color is orange. Again, I take its color code, copy it, and bring it here. I'll also set the next color and align it with this one. For the next color, I want to go with a gray theme. For example, I'll set this one. This becomes my first neutral color. This color will be F5, and I can easily copy it from itself. I'll set the first honor as well and align it with this one. For my last color, I want to set it to black. I'll define this as black, then copy one of these again and bring it here. Let's set the color code first, which will be 6 zeros. This will be for the colors. So I've now come to the steps, kids. We've defined our colors. I said, oh, the main color is blue, the second one is now yellow-orange, then it's gray, and then it's blackish. Now, the second step, kids, I'll align this with this and make a copy of it to use later for my font. Okay, this is also about spacing. I see these are also the website fonts, or rather the website font. I can, kids, again here define one or two fonts for my main font. Let's do this together now. I also need to write down the website fonts. Okay, these are basically my fonts. Now, I want to set the entire site with one font. Kids, I write down, sir, I write font family here. Okay. And the font I want to use is Iran Sans X. Kids, I write Iran Sans X. Now, I also set its own fonts exactly to Iran Sans X to create a sense of uniformity. I align these together and I want to draw a line as well. I select a line here, draw it in between, and say if its color fades, I align this to the center and also show them aligned horizontally. These become the colors of my website, guys. I bring it to the center. Now, from here, I have selected my font. In the next part, I define the sizes. I write the sizes of the website, or the font sizes of the website, whichever is intended. Again, I make a copy of this and bring it down. Okay, now here I start explaining to the guys what I want to set for each one. I say, for example, I want my H1 to be, let's say, 40 pixels in size. Just a minute. Let me cut this and write it as 40 pixels. Okay? Now, I group this together again and make another copy of it. So for example, I want H2 to be 35 pixels. Similarly, the kids define my sizes in order. And this is H2, and let's write this one above in uppercase. I make another copy of it. I won't define beyond H3, but you can define up to H6. Let's say H3 should also be large, for example, 30 pixels. Now I will define the rest in order. I also want to define a text font, meaning I want to say that my paragraphs or text elements should be how big, for example, 15 pixels. This is the definition, guys. What? The sizes that I am aligning vertically, I am also aligning them to the center. The next part that I want to define, guys, includes many different sections that you can define in this file. But I only want to define a few so you can get familiar with them. Now the next part will be about the border radius, or the curvature that I want to give to the boxes. I write border radius in Persian, guys, but you can write whatever you have in mind. Let me change it for a minute. Or for example, I write sir. I can define box radii on the website, guys, based on different states. Or for example, I can write the website styles where I can specify both the border radius and the shadow. I can say, hey, I want the border radius to be 8 pixels, okay? I can also write it down here and say that the border radius is equal to 8 pixels, and it should remain fixed for me right here. What's the next part I want to define, guys? It's how I want to say the shadow should be. I'll make this white effect. I say drop shadow. Blur it. For example, 20 pixels. And I want to make it lighter. It reduced it by 8 pixels as well. Yeah. Now guys, there's an option that Figma itself has, and often the CSS code gives us too, but we can use it. Right now, it has set it for me, saying, sir, you can define it like this. I use this exactly, and set it for the text, saying, sir, let the border radius be like this as well. Sometimes the 20 pixel size needs to be larger. For example, 24 pixels. I change this to Iran Sans X and make it a bit bigger, for instance, making it 40. It becomes a bit out of place, so I'm forced to make it smaller. I can also define this for the box, guys. I align this and bring it up to align with this. Guys, I can define the rest of the files I have and the dimensional sizes I need here based on my requirements. For example, I can set the title to be this, the body to be this, the radius to be this, and even define the spacing between the boxes and everything else. I can also specify that a few poster boxes should be placed with a spacing of 10 pixels, or if I need to give padding to the sections, I can give them 50 from the top and bottom. I can define all of these in this guideline, and it will be integrated throughout my entire website.